Hello, and we are back again with Report to the Principal's Office by Jerry Spinelli. We left off in chapter 10 where everybody came to the principal's office to have lunch. And lo and behold, guess what? The hamster appears and just chaos ensues. And in walks Pickles and catches the hamster. So let's see what takes place in chapter 11. Within 5 minutes, the squirming hamster was cleaned up and deposited in an unused fish tank borrowed from the science lab. And at that point, Sonny Wilder nodded to the Sloppy Joe bowl and announced, "I'm not eating anything a hamster crawled through." "Would you?" "What?" said Mr. Brimlow, looking shocked. "That gives it flavoring." What do you think? Sonny just stared at the principal until he laughed. He reached out and tweaked her nose. Just kidding. He wondered how long it would take before he saw a smile on this kid's face. Another 5 minutes passed as Mr. Brimlow called the kitchen and had a new batch of Sloppy Joe and tortillas delivered. Forget the salad. This time the food was brought in by a man. He said the dignified lady had come back trembling and had told the manager she was returning to her old job at a private boarding school. The straws were still in the pocket of her abandoned apron. The man took them, tossed them onto the table, and left. "I'm not using any straw that some animal's lips were on," declared Sonny Wilder. "Fine," said the principal. "You have my permission to drink straight from the carton." He was beginning to think she was serious about being expelled from school. For some time after Mr. Brimlow said, "Dig in," no one spoke. He decided to break the ice himself with the question to the Johnson boy. "So, Dennis, considering your nickname, you must be pretty fond of pickles, huh?" Pickles had not folded his sloppy Joe filling onto a tortilla, Mexican style, as had the others. He had instead laid a tortilla flat on his plate and spread a layer of sloppy Joe over it, creating a sort of small pizza. He cut the pie into neat, equal-sized wedges. "I hate pickles," he said. "Really?" "Yeah, I think they're neat-looking, and I like how the name sounds, but I can't stand the taste. My mother was always giving me one with my sandwich. That's why I put them on the Christmas tree, to get rid of them." Mr. Brimlow filled in the other kids on how Pickles got his name. Salem snickered. "Good thing you didn't decide to hate bananas." "That's funny." "Bananas Johnson," giggled Eddie, trying to include Sonny Wilder. Mr. Brimlow said, "What food would you hang on a Christmas tree, Miss Wilder, if you had to?" "Monkey brains," said Sonny Wilder, while the rest of the kids laughed. Her sneer made it clear what she thought of this silly conversation. Salem Brownmiller was jotting again in her notepad. "Now, Miss Brownmiller," said the principal, "there must be a story behind your name as well. Don't tell me you're a witch." Salem laid her pencil down. "That's not far off, actually. My mother and father met each other in Salem, Massachusetts. My father says she bewitched him. He said he wanted his firstborn to be named Salem, whether it's a boy or a girl. I happen to think it's better as a girl's name, but of course I'm prejudiced. Actually, I didn't like my name at first. That is, when I got old enough to realize I had a name, of course. I loathed it, which means I really, really hated it. But then, when I decided to be a writer, I started liking it, and now I love it. I mean, if you're a writer, you need a name that people will remember when they see it with all those other names on the bookshelves, right? As for my last name, I don't know. I'm still debating whether to change it or not. I mean, Brown, Miller, together? How common can you get? Sometimes I have nightmares about marrying someone named Jones and hyphenating my name. Can you see it? Salem Brown Miller Jones? Egad. Egad, indeed, echoed Mr. Brimlow quickly, seizing the chance to silence Miss Brown Miller lest she talk the entire lunch period away. And now, Miss Weiler, all heads turned towards the sour-faced girl with the Death to Mushroom t-shirt. Now, also featuring a tiny orange paw print from her brief encounter with the hamster. Salem loves her name. How do you feel about yours? I think it's dumb, she said. Is there a story behind it? No. Well, the principal smiled. It didn't fall down out of the sky and land on your birth certificate, did it? Salem and Eddie Mott snickered. Sonny glared. Mr. Brimlow decided not to be so flip with Weiler. It's not a story, Sonny sniffed. All were silent. She waved her fajita. It's just dumb. When I was born, my mother said it was like a little ray of sunshine. Before Eddie Mott realized what was happening, the words were out of her mouth. So what, did she name you Little Ray? This time it wasn't snickers. It was outright laughter. Salem thumbed back to a previous page in her notepad entitled Mott Personalities and wrote, Comedian. Yeah, Sonny snarled. Well, the joke was on her, 'cause I'm a black cloud everywhere I go. If you let me hang around long enough, pretty soon everybody be going off to the shrink. They'll be so depressed. She ripped a bite from her fajita. She looked up at the faces around the table. She settled on Mr. Brimlow's. See, already I'm ruining your lunch. Brimlow chomped on his fajita. Not ruining my lunch. He polled the others. Is Sonny ruining anybody else's lunch here? Everybody shook their heads no. Eddie Mott a trifle belatedly. Mr. Mott, said the principal, and almost regretted it when he saw the boy tense up. Eddie, you and I seem to be the only ones here today without unusual names. I'll tell you, I almost feel positively boring. Salem spoke with a kindly glance toward Eddie. You don't need an interesting name to be an interesting person. Mr. Brimlow nodded. He smiled. You're absolutely right, Brim Miller. Let that be the amen for this little discussion. A warm tide rose on Mr. Brimlow's breast. He really liked these kids. He wanted more of them. Mr. Mott, he said, as I recall from your record, you were a flag raiser at Brockhurst. How would you like the same job here at Plumstead? The boy's expression barely changed, but for a moment that lost look was gone. Okay, he said, with a slight shrug, and Mr. Brimlow knew it was more than just okay. And you'll need help, right? Said the principal. Eddie nodded. You should always have two people, one to hold the flag and attach it, and the other to pull the rope. Sometimes when my partner was absent, I did it all by myself, but it's pretty tricky. You have to be careful never to let it touch the ground. Right, agreed Mr. Brimlow. Well, how about if you work with Johnson here? You can teach him the ropes. You'll both need to be here as soon as the doors open. First bell, every day, Dennis. Pickles nodded. No problem. Eddie wasn't sure how he felt about this. On one hand, it was exciting to be paired with a famous person. On the other hand, it was a little scary, too. Eddie couldn't imagine himself telling the great Pickles Johnson what to do. Suppose he got nervous and forgot something. Suppose Pickles wanted to raise a pickle instead of the flag. Mr. Brimlow got up and walked to the file cabinet on top of which sat the glass tank with the hamster. Does anybody know where this critter came from or who it belongs to? Salem raised her hand, and against her better judgment, he let her speak. She told about the 8th graders chasing it in the hallway and how she lured it into her book bag because, as a writer, one of your most important skills is to put yourself in other people's places so you can understand them and therefore write better about them, which is precisely what I did in this case, except it was a hamster, not a person. Of course, I asked myself, now, if I were a hamster being chased down a hallway, remembering a hamster is a rodent, what? Okay, Salem, Mr. Brimlow jumped in. Got the picture. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'll make announcements today, tomorrow. If nobody comes forward to claim the critter, well, he smacked the cabinet, then we'll keep it right here, Miss Waller. The girl looked up. How would you like to be keeper of the critter? She crinkled her face. Do I have to? Mr. Brimlow smiled. Yes, be here after school tomorrow. The bell rang. They were getting up. He held out his hand. Ideas were rushing. Hold it a second, gang. 30 seconds tops. You won't be late. 2 quick things. On September 18th, for the opening assembly, we're going to present Plumstead's new mascots. The students will vote for it. 3 choices, 1 from each grade. I want you guys to come up with the nomination from 6th grade. You'll be a committee of 4. Salem, you've just volunteered to be chairman. Excuse me, chairwoman. Outside the hallway was bustling. And let's do this again next week. Wednesday, right here, lunch. Got it? Okay, out of here. Oh, that was very good. I wonder if she's going to take care of the critter. We will find out in chapter 12. And I wonder if they're going to show up next week for lunch. We'll see. See you there. Bye, lovely.